The sound of waves crashing against the boat's hull wasn't enough to drown out the screams echoing in Tom's mind. His hands trembled on the steering wheel as he glanced in the rear-view mirror, watching the jet ski he had left behind. His daughter Ashley, just 15 years old, was becoming nothing more than a tiny speck in the darkness of the night. The storm was approaching, bringing heavy clouds that swallowed the last stars in the sky. "This is for the best," he whispered to himself, repeating Lisa's words, his new wife's words. "She will never let you move on. She will never allow you to be happy again." But each word fell hollow, as if he were reciting lines from a script written by someone else. The engine roared as he accelerated, trying to leave behind not only his daughter, but also the crushing weight of guilt that was already eating away at his chest. Ashley was a spitting image of Rachel, his late wife. The same deep eyes, the same gentle smile that could brighten even the darkest days. And maybe that was exactly why Lisa hated her so much. The rain began to fall, first in soft droplets, then in thick sheets that reduced visibility to almost nothing. Tom imagined Ashley alone, adrift, the panic rising in her chest as a fuel-starved jet ski rocked helplessly against the increasingly violent waves. His daughter, who had always trusted him blindly, who had held his hand at Rachel's funeral, who hugged him every morning as if to make sure he was still there. Then, a lightning bolt split the sky, revealing something that would change the course of that fateful night. A small fishing boat, its lights shining like a beacon of hope in the storm. At the helm was Mike, a man known in the village for his solitude and for carrying in his eyes the weight of his own losses. Tom slowed down, his heart pounding so hard it felt like it would burst from his chest. Lisa's voice still whispered in his mind, but now it was overpowered by another, Rachel's voice, gentle and firm as it had always been. "Protect our little girl, Tom. Above all, protect Ashley." His hands twisted the wheels sharply, the boat making a tight turn that sent a wall of water into the air. Mike's boat was moving in the direction where Tom had abandoned Ashley. Maybe, he thought, there was still time. Maybe he could reach her before. The second lightning bolt illuminated the sky, revealing a sight that froze his blood. The jet ski was empty, tossing violently against the waves. Ashley had disappeared into the dark waters. The scream that tore from Tom's throat was raw, filled with a desperation he had never known. He accelerated toward the spot, his eyes frantically scanning the turbulent surface of the sea. But the darkness and rain made it impossible to distinguish anything beyond the furious waves. That's when he realized the jet ski was no longer visible. It had vanished into the storm, taking with it his last hope of finding Ashley alive. Tom collapsed to his knees on the wet deck, his tears mixing with the rain streaming down his face. What had he done? How could he have allowed Lisa's poisonous words to turn him into a monster? Now, alone in the storm, Tom was beginning to understand the true cost of his weakness. And that cost was far too high to bear. The icy waters wrapped around Ashley like a liquid prison. Every stroke was a battle against the raging sea, her strength fading with each passing moment. The salty taste in her mouth mixed with her tears, not out of fear of the death lurking nearby, but from the pain of betrayal. The image of her father sailing away burned into her mind like an open wound. Mike watched the radar of his small boat with heightened attention. 15 years at sea had taught him how to read the signs of storm, and something about that night kept him on edge. Ever since he had lost his own daughter, Sarah, in an accident 3 years ago, every young soul in danger had become a personal mission. The distant hum of an engine caught his attention, a boat speeding away, leaving behind a solitary jet ski. "Something's wrong," he muttered to himself, adjusting his course toward the small object being tossed violently by the waves. That's when his eyes caught movement in the water, a hand emerging briefly before disappearing once again beneath the dark waves. Ashley felt her muscles locking up from the cold. The stories her mother Rachel used to tell her about never giving up now felt like a distant echo. "You have her strength inside you," people always said. But what strength could survive this kind of betrayal? Her own father, the man who had once been her hero, had chosen Lisa's poison over a daughter's love. Mike's boat drew closer just as Ashley's consciousness began to slip away. His experienced hands threw a life buoy with precision, and then, without hesitation, he dove into the stormy waters himself. The moment his arms wrapped around the girl's frozen body, memories of his own loss surged through him. But this time, fate was offering him a chance at redemption. "Hold on, kid," Mike whispered, fighting against the waves to get back to the boat. Ashley trembled violently in his arms, her skin pale with a bluish tint that deeply worried him. Once aboard, he wrapped her in thermal blankets, his rough hands moving with surprising gentleness. Slowly, warmth began returning to Ashley's body, but the cold inside her soul remained. When she finally managed to speak, her words came out weak and broken. Why did he do this? Mike recognized that tone of helplessness all too well. It was the same he had carried for so long after losing Sarah. He sat beside the girl, offering no answers, only a solid presence in the midst of the chaos. "Sometimes," he said, his voice hoarse as it blended with the sound of the rain that was now beginning to ease, "the people who are supposed to protect us are the ones who hurt us the most. Not because they don't love us, but because they let their own fears and weaknesses consume them." Ashley looked at him, finding in his eyes an understanding that went beyond words. Mike continued, "But you have something special. You survived not just the water, but the worst kind of storm, the betrayal of someone you loved." The sun began to rise on the horizon, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. The storm had passed, leaving behind a calmer sea and two souls bound together by pain, but also by hope. Ashley didn't know it yet, but that night would mark not just the end of the life she once knew, but the beginning of a journey of healing that would change both her story and Mike's forever. 3 months had passed since that stormy night. Mike's small house by the sea had become a refuge for Ashley, a place where the wounds of her soul were slowly beginning to heal. Mornings now had a new rhythm. She helped Mike prepare the fishing nets, her fingers growing more skilled with the knots that once seemed impossible. The scent of fresh coffee and toasted bread filled the modest kitchen, reminding her of the mornings she'd spent with Rachel, her mother. Mike watched Ashley's gradual transformation with a mix of pride and concern. The initial fear in her eyes had been replaced by a quiet determination, but he knew that the questions about Tom still kept her awake at night. The sea, which had almost taken her life, now seemed to calm her. She spent hours sitting on the small dock, watching the waves, as if searching for answers in their constant motion. That particular morning, as they organized the bait for the day's fishing, an unfamiliar car pulled up in front of the house. A well-dressed woman stepped out, her high heels completely unsuited for the sandy beach. Ashley felt her heart stop when she recognized Jennifer, Lisa's sister. "I knew I'd find you here," Jennifer said, her gaze shifting between Ashley and Mike. "Tom is in the hospital." "Lisa," she finally showed her true colors. Jennifer's words hit like a stone in the quiet morning. Tom had discovered that Lisa had been slowly poisoning his coffee with small doses of controlled substances, manipulating his emotions and thoughts for months. The guilt of abandoning Ashley had consumed him day after day, while Lisa continued her twisted game of control. "He's dying, Ashley," Jennifer continued, her voice trembling. "The doctors say the damage to his liver is severe. He's begging to see you one last time." Mike felt Ashley stiffen beside him. He recognized that posture. It was the same one his daughter Sarah used to have when facing difficult situations. He placed a gentle hand on Ashley's shoulder, offering silent support. "Why should I go?" Ashley asked, her voice heavy with sleepless nights. "He left me to die." Jennifer took a step forward, her hand shaking as she handed Ashley a worn envelope. "Because he wasn't himself. And because we found this among Lisa's belongings." Inside the envelope, Ashley found old letters from Rachel, her mother, all addressed to Tom. Letters that Lisa had hidden, in which Rachel had begged Tom to protect their little Ashley, to never let the bitterness of grief separate them. Letters that had never reached him. Mike watched as silent tears rolled down Ashley's face while she read her mother's words. His heart clenched as he recognized the complexity of the situation, the delicate balance between forgiveness and self-preservation, between love and protection. Sometimes, Mike said softly, forgiveness isn't about forgetting, but about understanding. Your mother knew that. Ashley looked at the sea, then at the letters in her hands, and finally at Mike. In her eyes, a different kind of storm was forming. Not one of anger or fear, but a painful understanding of human frailty. The hospital corridor seemed endless. Ashley clutched her mother's letters to her chest as Mike walked beside her, his silent presence giving her the strength she needed with every step. The sterile scent of antiseptic brought back memories of the day Rachel passed away. The same clinical environment, the same feeling of helplessness in the face of the inevitable. Jennifer led them to the room where Tom was being treated. Through the small window in the door, Ashley saw her father for the first time in 3 months. The strong man she had once known was now a pale shadow against the white sheets. Tubes and monitors told the story of a body fighting to survive. "You don't have to go in if you're not ready," Mike said gently, noticing the hesitation in her eyes. Ashley squeezed the letters tighter, feeling the crumpled paper beneath her fingers. "My mother's last words were about forgiveness," she whispered, her voice trembling. She always said that holding on to resentment was like drinking poison and expecting the other person to get sick. Inside the room, Tom opened his eyes as he heard the door creak. His face, marked by illness, lit up for a moment when he saw his daughter. The words he had rehearsed so many times died in his throat, replaced by silent tears. Ashley sat down in the chair beside the bed, placing the letters on a nightstand. The silence between father and daughter carried the weight of all the unsaid words, of all the lost moments. "Lisa's in prison," Tom finally said, his voice hoarse and weak. "I should have seen it. I should have protected you. Why didn't you read Mom's letters?" Ashley asked, her eyes fixed on his trembling hands. "What letters?" Tom's confusion seemed genuine. Ashley picked up one of the letters and began reading aloud. Rachel's words filled the room with an almost tangible presence. "My love, when I'm gone, promise me you will keep our greatest treasure safe. Ashley is the best of both of us, Tom. Don't let grief turn love into something unrecognizable." Tears now streamed freely down Tom's face. The heart monitor beeped faster, echoing the turmoil inside him. Lisa, she had them all, this whole time. Mike, watching from the doorway, saw the exact moment when something shifted in Ashley's gaze. It was the same look he had seen in his own reflection on the day he finally accepted Sarah's death, a mix of pain and understanding, of loss and possibility. "The doctors say I need a transplant," Tom continued, his voice faltering. "But my blood type is rare in time." Ashley felt the weight of his revelation. Her father was dying, just as her mother had years before. But this time, it was different. There was a choice to be made, a path of forgiveness that could change everything. "I have the same blood type as you," she said, the words escaping before she had fully processed them. "Mom used to joke about it, saying it was just another sign that I was your perfect copy." The silence that followed carried the weight of a decision that could redefine not only 2 lives, but also the meaning of family, forgiveness, and redemption. Ashley's decision to be a donor for her father triggered a series of events no one could have foreseen. During the preliminary tests, a discovery shook the very foundation of everything she thought she knew about her family. Her blood type, which had always been a playful resemblance between her and Tom, revealed a truth that had been kept hidden for 15 years. Tom was not her biological father. The silence in the doctor's office felt like lead. Jennifer, who had accompanied Ashley for the test, let out a quiet sigh of recognition. She had always known but had promised Rachel to keep the secret. "Your mother found out she was pregnant shortly after meeting Tom," Jennifer explained, her voice trembling under the weight of the truth. "He knew from the start that you weren't his biological daughter, but it never mattered to him. Rachel and Tom decided that love would be stronger than blood." Ashley staggered under the impact of those words. Memories of her childhood, Tom's proud smiles at her school performances, the nights he stayed awake holding her hand when she had fevers, the way his eyes lit up when she called him Dad, all took on a new meaning. Mike, waiting outside the room, immediately sensed that something had changed when Ashley stepped out. The determination in her eyes had been replaced by a mixture of confusion and heartbreak, one he knew all too well. "He loved me so much that he chose to be my father," Ashley whispered, her words broken by sobs. And yet in one single night, he let Lisa convince him to. The realization hit Ashley like a wave. Tom had not only abandoned her that stormy night, he had betrayed a choice made 15 years ago, a decision of love that transcended blood. And the pain of that betrayal now carried an even heavier weight. Jennifer then revealed Rachel's final letter, kept for this exact moment. In it, Rachel explained why she had chosen to keep the secret, fearing that the truth might one day be used to separate father and daughter. "True love," she wrote, "is a choice we make every day. Tom chose to be your father long before you were born, and that choice is worth more than any blood tie." In the hospital room, Tom continued his silent battle against time. Unaware of the discovery, he held an old photograph of Ashley as a baby in his trembling hands. The image captured the exact moment he had first held her. His eyes overflowed with love that had nothing to do with DNA. Mike watched Ashley struggle with her emotions, recognizing in her the same strength he had seen in Sarah. "Sometimes," he said softly, "our deepest wounds can become our greatest sources of healing. The question now isn't whether you could be a donor, but how this truth changes the story you thought you knew." Ashley gazed out the hospital window, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and pink. The truth about her origins didn't change the fact that Tom had been her father in every moment that mattered, until that fateful night. Now, she faced an even more complex decision. How could she reconcile 15 years of unconditional love with the betrayal that had nearly cost her life? Night had fallen over the hospital when Ashley finally made her decision. The hallway outside the ICU was silent, except for the soft beeping of monitors and the occasional movement of the medical staff. Mike held her hand as she stood outside Tom's room, looking at him through the glass window. Her father, yes, she still considered him her father, was sleeping restlessly, his face etched with suffering. "I'll do the transplant," Ashley said, her voice steady despite the tears threatening to fall. Not because of what happened that night, but because of the 15 years he chose to love me. Mike gave her hand a gentle squeeze. In his eyes, Ashley saw the same look he had when speaking of Sarah, a mix of pain and love that only true parents knew. "Are you sure?" he asked, his voice rough with concern. Before Ashley could answer, Jennifer appeared in the hallway, her face pale and tense. "Tom's tests, they've gotten worse," she said urgently. "The doctors say he needs a transplant within the next 12 hours, or..." The weight of the situation settled over them like a heavy fog. Ashley walked into Tom's room, her legs trembling slightly. By his bedside, she found another letter from Rachel, left by Jennifer. This one was different. It was addressed to her, not to Tom. With trembling fingers, Ashley opened the envelope. Her mother's handwriting, so familiar and comforting, filled the page. "My dear daughter, if you're reading this, it means you've discovered the truth about Tom. But there's something even more important I need you to know. Your biological father died, never knowing you existed. Tom's choice to be your father was the greatest act of love I've ever witnessed. He didn't have to, but he wanted to with every fiber of his being." Ashley lifted her gaze from the letter to find Tom awake, watching her with a look of painful understanding. "You know," he whispered. "Why?" Ashley asked, her voice breaking. "Why did you choose to be my father, even knowing I wasn't biologically yours?" Tom tried to sit up, his movements weak and labored. "Because the moment I saw you, so small in a hospital crib, I knew you were mine," he said, tears filling his tired eyes. "Blood didn't matter, you were mine." And then his voice faltered, the tears now streaming freely down his aged face. "Then I let Lisa poison not just my body, but my soul. I let her destroy the purest love I had ever known. The heart monitor began beeping with warning sounds. Tom's heart was failing rapidly. Medical staff rushed in, moving with urgent precision. Ashley was pushed back, but not before she heard his final words before losing consciousness. "Forgive me, my daughter, please." Mike caught her as her legs gave out beneath her. Over his shoulder, Ashley saw the doctors working frantically to stabilize Tom. Across the hallway, the clock marked the crucial hours left to save the man who had chosen to be her father. 12 hours that would determine not only his fate, but also the possibility of redemption for a family shattered by secrets and betrayals. Dawn was breaking when Ashley opened her eyes in the recovery room. The soft aroma of fresh coffee filled the air. Mike had stayed by her side through the entire surgery, keeping his silent promise of support. Through the window, she could see the ocean in the distance, its waters calm, so different from the storm that had nearly claimed her life months ago. "Tom is stable," Jennifer said gently as she entered the room. "The doctors say the transplant was a success." Ashley closed her eyes, letting relief wash over her like a gentle wave. Her decision to donate part of her liver to Tom hadn't been just about forgiveness. It had been about choosing love, just as he had done 15 years ago. Mike approached her bed, his eyes carrying that paternal warmth she had come to recognize. "You know," he said, adjusting the blanket over her shoulders, "there are different kinds of courage. Sometimes it takes more strength to forgive than to survive." In the weeks that followed, as both Tom and Ashley recovered, a new dynamic began to form. The hospital room became a space not just for physical healing, but for emotional restoration. Freed from Lisa's toxic influence, Tom started sharing stories from Ashley's childhood. Precious moments that revealed the depth of his love for her. "Do you remember your first day of school?" he asked one afternoon, his voice stronger each day. "You hid behind my legs, but when the teacher mentioned stories about the ocean, your eyes lit up, just like Rachel's." Ashley smiled, remembering. "And then you started taking me fishing every Sunday." "Because that was our time," Tom said, his words heavy with meaning. "Blood never defined our family. Ashley, those moments did." Mike, who had become a constant presence in their lives, added his own perspective. "Family," he said, "is built on the small choices we make every day. In every good night, in every hug, in every moment we choose to stay." On a particularly peaceful Sunday, 3 months after the surgery, Ashley found herself back on Mike's small fishing boat. But this time, Tom was with them. Her father was still weak, but there was a new light in his eyes, the light of a man who had been given a second chance and understood its value. As Mike steered the boat through the tranquil waters, Ashley reached for Tom's hand. The ocean, which had once been the setting of her greatest pain, now bore witness to a new beginning. That morning, Jennifer had brought Rachel's final letter, the one meant for this very moment. True love knows no limits of blood or time. It flourishes in the choices we make, in the second chances we give, in the forgiveness we offer. Tom chose to be your father. You chose to forgive. And in those choices, my dear daughter, lies the true magic of family. The sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink. Mike cast the fishing nets into the sea, a gesture that now carried a deeper meaning. Just like the nets, their lives have become intertwined in unexpected ways, forming a web of love, forgiveness, and redemption. "We're home," Ashley whispered, her words carried by the gentle breeze. Tom squeezed her hand in response, while Mike smiled at the helm. There, between the sky and the sea, 3 hearts wounded by the past found healing in the present and hope for the future. Dear viewers, if this story touched your heart, don't forget to share your thoughts in the comments. Your feedback is essential for us to continue bringing you deep and transformative stories like this one. If you enjoyed it, leave a like and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss our next emotional narratives. Together, we can explore even more stories that remind us of the power of love, forgiveness, and true family. See you in the next story.